Here we are today with another Ditch Digger CEO. I'm not even sure what number this is, and I don't care, because this one could be looked at as number one.
Oh, okay.
This one could be number one, Q. This buddy of mine I've been trying to get on since the beginning.
That's true.
But he's so doggone busy, right? He's got the surfing life, right? He's got the California philanthropic world and Chicago. He's involved in pretty heavy, and then he still has a lot to do with this cool company that we're sitting at today.
Yeah.
NCSA.
Absolutely.
So it's tough to get a hold of this guy, but we got him, man.
We did
got
get
him.
We did get him on one of the hottest days in Chicago. What we're going to do is bring the heat to you all through your ears. All right. So just be ready, because this man is phenomenal. Seriously, I'm so excited. I actually had the opportunity to do a tour of his and to see the culture that he created, and he kind of started it. It's just phenomenal to see, and the excitement that he's doing, and the legacy that he's leaving.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh! Seriously, I'm excited.
It's awesome, and things I think you'll learn today for those listeners is what a vision really looks like from a person that's got some creativity, loves entrepreneurship, can present the vision to a team.
Yeah.
A very small team, and execute on the vision to create a very big team in a space. Okay, very often when I look at businesses and entrepreneurship, I'm constantly looking at the market cap, the size of the market cap. How big is that industry? If we start in that industry, how big is it? And if I got 5% of that industry, or that business did, that I might be investing in, what does it come out to, right? So here's a guy that kind of built his own market cap. When I met Chris, he was maybe $7-8 million business, and he's telling me this vision of 40, 50, 100 million in revenues he could do. And I'm asking, what size is this industry? And he goes, well, it's just kind of what I do, and maybe a few others do it, but there's not really a big market cap, right? There's nothing really besides what him and a few were doing in it. So I was like, man, how do you have a vision to actually build this industry? And that's what he's done. So what I really want people to listen to, right? How you can have a vision for an industry that's not even there, and then execute on that vision and create an industry maybe that isn't even there in some cases. This doesn't happen very often, right? I mean, Ray Kroc did this in McDonald's, and we're trying to do this in one business that we have currently right now, and it's just not easy. It's really tough. Because to share your vision, it's a lot easier to share your vision when there's already a big industry that you can say, here's the size of the industry, and we're going after it. All we need is 1 or 2% of it, and we're going to be successful, right? But how do you sell a vision when it's not there yet, right? When there's no industry yet. So okay, that's probably not enough of an intro yet, but we're going to introduce him right now, my buddy Chris Krause. Chris, welcome, buddy.
Thanks for having me, Gary, and Q and Chris. It's an honor to be here.
And we got Chris times 3 here, because we got little Chris here. Christopher's here from California with his dad. So welcome to you too, buddy. We'll get you on a little later on the mic. So we got 3 Chris's, our producer, and you 2 characters. So Q and I we're the oddball. We're the oddballs.
Yeah,
now.
Absolutely.
All right, so what we like to do, Chris, is we like to start from the beginning, right? And we want you to go through your upbringing, how you were raised. I know a lot about your upbringing and your family life, and what a great family you had, father, mother, family and stuff. So I want to talk about that, and where'd you kind of get the work ethic you had to do the things you did, play college football and all the other cool things. So
well, Gary, I want to thank you for what you're doing with this podcast. It's inspiring. I've had a chance to listen to a lot of your guests, and every one of them I learned from, and it's just that for me to be on along with all the other greats that you've had on is an honor, and for this to be available for people around the world to listen to learn from these really incredible, smart people who have passion and grit and work ethics and creativity like none other is really exciting, and I think you're doing a service for this country, for entrepreneurship. So tip of the hat for you guys for this is so for me to be on here is awesome.
Q and I are having a blast with it. We're learning a lot as we do it too, so it's just a lot of fun. So thank you.
Well, taking my story is I like to think it comes from, it's just like a lot of the other stories. I come from pretty blue collar background. My grandparents were Polish immigrants and factory workers up in Waukegan in North Chicago, and my grandfather got up at 3 a.m. and would go to work at the factory and come back, and the whole idea was work hard, be a part of the union, and they'll take care of you, and that was kind of the mindset back then. And my grandmother was an orphan, and she raised 5 boys, and my father was one of them, and they all ended up getting college educated, which in the 40s was amazing for kids to come out of North Chicago. But they did it through hard work. All of them, they caddied at Shore Acres Country Club down the street and carried golf bags. And
hey, don't talk too much about that. That's my competition. You don't try to talk about how bad they are. It's a beautiful place.
Well, I caddied there too. I mean, it was like I followed in the footsteps. My grandfather caddied there. It's like the world needs ditch diggers too. It's like it's like Caddyshack. It was like kind of the struggling kid who wanted to go to college trying to save a few bucks.
Well, Chris, just to stop there for a second, many of these people, right, Q, have been caddies. I mean, many of the leaders that we've interviewed,
That's a true statement.
Millionaires and billionaires, many of them have been caddies, and I tell these stories to the caddies at our golf club at Bull Valley. I'm going to get some plug in for Bull Valley.
Yeah.
At Bull Valley, the greatest golf club in the world. I talk to these kids and get them listening as well. But it's fun because they're hearing, caddies become very successful people, and tell us an example of all the things that you learned as a caddy that carried on too, Chris.
Well, first of all, you look at it, and my grandfather made like $1 a loop, and then I remember I made like $18 a loop, So then now the kids now are making so much money. So it was like God, you think about so do a double 36. I would go make $36 times 2, $72. I would get, and plus maybe get a tip on there. I could almost make $100 in a day, which was like but I would be out there from 6 in the morning till 6 at night, hustling in 90-degree heat, carrying golf bags, chasing balls into the weeds, and it's crazy. But you learn about hard work. Number one, how to show up, but also you learn how to communicate with people and how people treat people. And some of the guys that were entrepreneurs, that were kind of new guys that earned their own money, seemed like they were always the guys that would throw you an extra $5. And this guy named Tom Joyce, who was one of the coolest guys. Everybody wanted to caddy for him because he was a hardworking guy who was self-made. But then there would be some other families that these guys who inherited all their money, and they would walk around with their nose up in the air, and they were better than everybody. So you start to see how people treated people, and you're like, I don't want I want to start. I knew how I wanted to be like Tom Joyce, this guy who owned 7-Up bottling, who he was one of the coolest guys there, and the guys who were self-made, that earned it themselves, were always the guys I thought that treated people right, and the people that weren't were usually the guys that you thought, that guy's a jerk. So it was really eye-opening for me to start to be around people with wealth and how they treated people, and you could start to form an opinion for a vision for who I wanted to be at that early age.
Yeah, and if you belong to Shore Acres then and now, it's one of the top 50 golf courses in the country or the world. It's rated, I think, at the top in the world, actually, top 50 or whatever it is in the world. And so you're going to have some great people there that were very successful or just came upon wealth, one or the other. And
the Armours and Reynolds Wrap and all the old money there was a lot of that there.
So you saw a lot of that. You saw a lot of people that had built something from nothing, and you could see how they treated people.
Donnelly Publishing. Yeah, there was a caddy for Rick Donnelly all the time, and his wife, and it was a great experience.
See, so how about communication skills, right? To be able to communicate with all these people and not. For you as a young guy, even when I met you, you had no problem reaching out, shaking hands with anybody, anywhere, ever, right? And you're still like that today. How much of that came from that as well? Because you're around these big name people, you had to caddy for them, you had to kind of build a relationship with them,
right?
As a young kid,
right?
That's quite an asset, right?
It just comes from a lot of how your dad raised you, and your mom raised you, and your grandparents, and you look them in the eye, stand up, give them a firm handshake, be confident, smile, say hello, how you doing, Mr., Mrs. Those are the hard values that you learn as a kid, and then you start to see on the golf course when you do that, and they start treating you as an equal, and they're like, oh, don't call me Mr. Smith, call me Bob. Oh, Bob. Now all of a sudden you start to work on an even playing field with guys that are are people that you want to emulate, maybe be like someday, and it's a great confidence builder. So for you to be able to look someone in the eye and be treated as an equal with a handshake that is firm, equally firm, and you're not shrinking away, and you're not any better than them, and you're not any worse than them. You're equal, and when you feel that way, it definitely carries into other aspects of your life.
Absolutely. So let's go into the rest of that childhood. When your mom, dad, how their the values they taught you. I mean, I know a lot of it are things we're talking about now, but your dad and mom were
they're devout Catholics. I went to church on Sundays, and my dad would either say, you're either going to work around the house or you're going to go out and get a job. So by the time I was in 5th, 6th grade, I had a paper out, and then I was caddying, and then I was doing everything I could to get out of the house and make money, because they made it clear to me that if I was going to go to college, I was going to pay for it. So they were putting food on the table and making ends meet, but it wasn't like I had a college fund. And luckily, sports became a big part of my life early in my life. And by the time I was 5th grade, 4th grade, I started playing football. And I had a neighbor that was an all-state basketball player who went on to play at Illinois, and he became my idol. And I wanted to follow the footsteps. And I said, well, Rob Judson, he was a guy who got a scholarship, and my mom and dad would encourage me and said, well, maybe someday you could get a scholarship. So I had a goal as a 5th grader that I was going to play football at a major university, and then probably go on to play pro someday too, was my goal. But the idea was if I could leverage sports into an education, that would put me ahead of the game in terms of being able to get into a college and have it paid for and do something I love. I love sports. So the way my mom and dad kept me focused on sports and were to keep me focused on academics, number one. Mm-hmm. And my dad, I got a C on my report card one year, and I had to sit out a season.
Wow!
And I never got a C again.
Wow! What year was that?
That was in 7th grade.
Okay.
In 7th grade, luckily it wasn't football season. It was the fall. It was the spring season. So I had to sit out.
It was dance.
It was dance. Yeah, I had to sit out. But the shot across the bow was heard, and I'm like, all right, I know they are serious about me getting good grades, and I'd never got to see again, and really put. I knew academics were my way to playing sports and football, so that way they kept me in line. So I got good grades because I was motivated to be able to see the field. And then and my father also shared, he never missed a game, and my mom never missed a game, and my grandfather never missed a game, and they were really were encouraging. But one of the things, like as a 6th, 7th grader, I'd come home after a game and I'd say, "Hey, Dad, how did I play? How did I do?" And he goes, "Son, you had a good game when you don't have to ask me."
I love it.
And that stuck with me, because it was by the time I got to high school, I started to, I was starting, and I got on the varsity and was starting both ways, and I was getting to be pretty good, and got interest from college coaches. But by then, after every game, Dad would say, "Son, God, you had a great game. It was awesome. You got a sack, and you did this and that and the other." And I'm like, "Oh, Dad, it's good, but I know where I could have done better." So I was critiquing myself. So him, that tough love early helped me really frame about what good when you do a good job, you don't have to ask someone. You did a good job.
Sure.
And so I didn't have to go run around asking people, how did I do? It became a way to help drive myself, which was a gift he gave me early in life, which was cool.
So back then, I used to wrestle North Chicago, and I played football against you guys too. But I was.
What high school did you go to? I'm sorry.
Oh, North Chicago.
He went to North Chicago. Okay,
yeah.
Gotcha.
So Grant, I don't know if we played in football that.
No, we would have whipped you.
You probably would. Well, I was only a freshman, sophomore year at Grant, but we wrestled you guys too, and this is a mostly black school, right? That's pretty cool. In the suburbs where I'm from, right? There'd be some minorities, black kids on the team here or there, lots of Hispanic kids on the team, but not very often was it all black, except North Chicago, and that was about
Waukegan kind of
Waukegan maybe a little bit, right? Yeah. But and how was that? Did you feel different, like an odd man out or anything ever, or what?
That's where I grew up. These were my brothers, man. I lived, I grew up on Argonne Drive, and we played ball together. These guys were. I didn't know it was any different,
Awesome.
until I actually went, got on a bus and went to play another high school at another place, and I'm like, wait a minute, it's usually the other way around. I'm like, and so I got kind of a reputation. People that people knew I was the white guy in North Chicago, but I was a team captain. Me and Bobby Brown were captains, and this freshman, I have a picture here for the audience who can't see it, but I'm the only white guy on the team. It's my freshman high school football picture. We were 9-0. We won conference. There was 18 of us on the team. So if there's 18 of us on the team, you think about it.
You're playing
everybody's playing both ways. Anyone is good. So we're all playing both ways. And we beat Libertyville, Lake Forest, Mundelein, Stevenson. We kicked all their butts. Wow. 18 of us. Awesome. Every kid on our team was good enough to play in college, without a doubt.
Really?
Every one of them.
Unreal.
And I have this picture, and actually have it framed in my office and at home, because that picture is a reminder. It's really what had given me passion about NCSA is like, what if every kid
that could go to college
at North Chicago on this 9-0 team had the assistance that I had and had a chance to go play in college.
Mm-hmm.
What if we had 18 kids go play sports on scholarships, and those kids came back to the community and started to mentor and teach other kids how to get good grades and what they need to do on and off the field and how they need to conduct themselves. And now it becomes, instead of I was the only kid to get a scholarship from that whole team.
Wow.
Oh.
And I look at this I take it really personally because I know today some of those kids are no longer with us. Some are in jail.
Oh.
And I know if I would have been there at this time with NCSA, we could have made a difference in that community.
Sure.
So this thing is more than just helping some kids go to college. This is really about, this can change communities when it becomes the expectation that you go to college rather than the outlier that got to go to college.
How about even beyond that, Chris? The entrepreneurship mentality you created after college by trying to solve this problem, right? You tried to solve a problem. You did solve a problem. You created opportunity that's crazy with all the employment you create, besides all the scholarships you create.
Yeah.
So think about what you did because of, and we're going to get into this next, right? What you did because of this problem you wanted to solve. And think about if you could go back to all those kids and say, hey, the same work ethic you have here that can put you into a college somewhere, can put you into entrepreneurship, a business, and solving problems someday. Man, let's do it together, right?
Right.
If you knew that back then, right? Wouldn't that kind of be amazing, like you're saying?
Yeah, it would have been incredible. And to know, I mean, there was probably 3 or 4 guys on that team that if I had their athletic ability, I would have been playing on Sundays for sure. I mean, it was really, we had some talent on that team. One of the guys was, state champion in 100 meters. I mean, you
had some good wrestlers too, because you're the same age, and we wrestled North Shore. They had great team wrestling teams.
The thing that really was disappointing was that we, through attrition, by the time we were 9-0 freshman year, 7-2 sophomore year, and by the time from sophomore year to junior year, between drugs and grades and kids getting kicked out of school, we lost 3 or 4 of our really top guys, and we went 4-5 my junior and senior year.
Wow.
So we had this talent abundant, and then all of a sudden the attrition, we went to being a great team to an average team, and we one of our guys was drunk and high. Well, he got kicked out of a game because the referee smelled alcohol in our huddle. Yeah. And it was like literally these guys were showing up. I'm like, what's going on here? These guys were starting running back, and these, so these guys, and it came down to having the kind of support at home, support with their family, support in the community.
Culture of the community.
The culture of the community is like, one of the guys' dads, I knew, he sold drugs, and it was just tough. And then it was coming back to North Chicago afterwards. I really made it a mission of mine to try to give back and make sure everybody had a chance to get the kind of services they need in terms of exposure and guidance to get through the process and find a good fit at the collegiate level. So.
Wow. So let's talk about this then. Let's talk about you got into college, your college career at Vanderbilt. A little bit about that and what got you thinking more about this college
that's
opportunity.
The whole recruiting process at the time, everyone would say if they're good enough, they'll find you. And if and their high school coach handles the recruiting. So I kind of was going along with my athletic director. He said, "Oh yeah, Wisconsin wants you. Because he went to Wisconsin." So I figured I was going to be a Badger, right? So then I started getting all these letters my junior year from all over the country, and I got letters from almost every Big Ten school except Wisconsin. I'm like, that's kind of odd. And then I kind of waited till I kind of figured my coach was handling everything, and by the time my senior year came around, I was reading in the newspaper about these kids who were getting offers and they're taking visits to campuses. I'm like, how come I'm not getting offers, and how come I'm not taking these visits? And I went and pulled the old letters out. They said, well, dear Chris, you've been recommended as a top-notch student athlete, and if you have an interest in Michigan, fill out this questionnaire and send it back to us, and we'll put you in the recruiting system. And if you have any other questions, call me here at this phone number, Bo Schembeckler. So I got all these letters, and I'm like, wait a minute, I didn't feel like that. I thought my coach was doing all this, so I started immediately. It was late my senior year. I started calling up the coaches.
Wow.
I became my first client, really. I had to market myself. Like everyone said I was going to get a scholarship because I was the top, number fifth in my class academically, and I was an honorable mention all state and all conference, all county, all that good stuff. And I had luckily we had enough video footage on me at the time where I was able to, call the coaches, and they said, hey, if you're interested, we need to see some tape on you. So my dad and I went and rented 2 VCRs, and we got the video footage. I made a little highlight tape. And I made like 8 of them, and we sent them out. And next thing I know, I started getting airplane tickets back in the mail to go visit campuses, which if I wouldn't have done that, I had never flown in an airplane. My first airplane flight was to Nashville to go visit Vanderbilt University on a all expenses paid visit. So I'd never flown in an airplane before. So I started getting interest back in Northwestern, and actually I got tickets to Colorado to go to the Air Force Academy, and I'm like, this is like, he said, Dad, I'm going to Colorado, and he goes, were you really seriously considering going to the Air Force? I'm like, no, but I want to go see Colorado. And he wouldn't let me go. So, but to talk about integrity, I mean, it's like you're not really going to consider not go. But I'm like, God, but I'd love to. I've never been out west before, But that experience was really the catalyst for me to say, wow, this is a broken system. There is a college, good kids get passed up every day. And I started reading, I remember I'd save articles about these athletes, and I played in this all-state game, and a lot of these kids were going on to Big Ten schools, but there were some kids that were really good that were going to D2 or D3 schools. And I'm like, God, how come this kid's going to Miami and this guy is going to North Central College? And I think the guy going to North Central College is just as good, if not better. And I started seeing how these coaches were, I think, missing the ball, and it was really a slip shot method where a lot of kids would get videos, and they were going off of heights and weights versus what they were doing on the field, and I didn't understand the process, and then later afterwards, I'm like, God, this is something that moms and dads need to know. This happens freshman year in high school, sophomore year, because you need to get the grades, the core GPAs. You need to make sure you're setting goals. You need to be lifting weights. We didn't have a free weights in our high school. We had one of those universal things. So when they put how much you benching, I'm like, I'm benching 500 pounds because I was in the machine thing. I was like, I benched the whole rack. It's 500 pounds. They're like, who's benching 500 pounds? You're like, no, we're talking free weights. I'm like, we don't have free weights. I don't
know what that is.
So actually,
you mean I don't pay for them?
So actually, my buddy had a set of free weights. So my junior year, I actually saved some money from caddying, and I bought his free weights. I put in my basement. So I actually started lifting free weights on my own because I knew I had to get, be mentioned, 250 to 300 pounds to even be considered to play linebacker.
So how much could you bench then? When you
I got to over 300.
Okay,
I got it up there. And in college I got a little bit more, but at the time it was, I went from like 500, 300 or 400 whatever on the machine to 225 was like, oh my God, that felt like, it was tough until it's a big difference lifting free weights in his machine rates. So
that's awesome.
But I figured it out.
So when you finally graduated from Vanderbilt, like how did not that the passion left, but what made the trigger, the pivot in your life to be like, okay, you know what, let me actually go ahead and start this thing because I'm realizing it's needed, like that transition. What job would you do, and what made you go into starting this?
Well, I didn't even know there was an opportunity to do this. I just knew in the back of my mind that was really kind of I wanted to get back to my high school. Every time I'd go back home, I was assistant coaching. I was volunteer coaching at North Chicago, and I was helping some of the local kids go through the process and just because I wanted to do that, and it was important to me, and I knew there were kids that were good enough to play, so I helped a few kids go on, and I was doing, and really my experience at Vanderbilt was awesome because I was in the educational school, and I majored my major is called human development, and it was the first school to have a human development major, and it really was big on internships and practicums. So I was able to get an internship my junior year with a management consulting firm. And I looked at this human development thing is where can I make the most money, and it was consulting. This is where consulting was big. So I was able to go out and met a guy in Nashville who had a management consulting company, and I was able to shadow him. So I was I would get on a helicopter with him. We'd fly to Murray, Ohio, and do management training in these factories. So I was watching this guy make a career working out of his home as a management consultant. I'm like, what a cool way of making a living. These guys, makes his own schedule. He's getting paid lots of money. So we would go to Nissan and Honda, their factories there. We would go do training, and that was exciting. And he said, well, if you want to get another aspect, you should go look at sales consulting. And he introduced me to a guy named Mark Stout, who had this Dynamics Incorporated, which he specialized in training in the car sales, in the car industry. So we would go to these car dealerships, and I learned the pitch, and I was doing sales training for car salespeople. So between management training and car sales training, I was becoming this little ninja in terms of sales, and I understood prospecting. I'd go cold call dealerships, and every time I go to a dealership, they'll say, who are you working for, and what are they paying you? He goes, come work for us. I was getting offers of jobs left and right because I was a go-getter. I didn't know any better, and I learned how to prospect at an early age with doing this, and so I had this set of skills that I've learned, but I didn't have passion for the car dealerships, car industry. So when I found a guy who was helping kids in Los Angeles after doing my internship, that was helping athletes go to college, I'm like, wow, this is something that I could get behind, because I used my story, and I'm like, if everyone told me I was going to get a scholarship, but until I marketed myself, it got me a $20,000 a year full room, board, books, tuition scholarship, and got into a college that I would frankly not have gotten into.
Equivalent to $50,000 or $60,000 a year today?
62, almost 65,000, 70,000 a year.
Yeah.
To go to Vanderbilt.
Wow. Right now. Yeah. And it was about 20,000 then, and I had, and to get in, it's like the 9th hardest college in the United States to get into, right just behind Harvard and a couple other schools.
So equivalent to $250,000 education.
$250,000 education, yeah. And the fact that I had sports on my resume, to be able to put yourself in a school where I had enough I had 128 valedictorians in my freshman class, so there was a lot of smart kids there.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, but to be able to have access to tutors and counselors and people that helped me get through college and learn. I took a class this guy Terry Deal did on corporate culture. So I was learning about corporate cultures, small group behavior. We had some computer classes, and there were some marketing classes we took. I took a pre-med track initially, and after barely getting through chemistry 102A and B and biology, I realized I wasn't going to become a doctor. So I focused on this human development path, which was really cool because I was able to get some practical experience and build a resume and have job offers before I graduated. Cool.
You said something that I think and it's definitely not transitioning off, but I feel like from an entrepreneur perspective, you just said some huge things. One, the human understanding human behavior is extremely important. Then you just said, you had a lot of you training people how to sell cars. You never sold a car before. Then you was really good with managing. And I think for any entrepreneur who's starting a business, one thing they're trying to get really good at is sales. So if you were, talking to them out there, us people out here that are trying to start a business or get a business going, what would probably be some things that we should be applying in order to get really good at some selling things, from that perspective that you did back then that you feel still work today?
Well, one of the interesting things that I didn't know going into sales training was sales is sales. Everything in life is sales. You're constantly selling yourself, no matter what you're doing. If you're selling yourself to your kids on what they should be doing, the right things at the right way. You're selling yourself to your spouse on why she should be with you. You're selling your employees or your boss as to why you're doing a good job. You're a teacher. You're selling how to understand math or science. So when I learned sales in the car industry, I realized that sales it crosses into every industry. You're constantly selling, whether you're selling houses, cars, computer software, you're selling for pharmaceutical companies. If you know sales, it's simple. It's want, it's need, it's benefits, and it's close. That's the simple thing. You got to want something, you got to need something. If there's no want and need, there's no need to go on. Want, need, benefits, and close, and then there's lots of different formulas. But if you understand that, it really becomes, there's different models. You got to approach, interview, demonstrate, validate, negotiate, close. The idea is it's sales is about trust, and sales is about education. If they don't trust from you, they'll never buy from you. Right. So once you start learning that if you can get someone to trust from you and believe you, then you get a chance to have someone buy from you. But if no one's ever going to buy from you if they don't buy you.
Sure.
And understanding that early was transformative and helpful as I've trained hundreds and hundreds of our scouts and do what we do today. But to go and teach people, it's not about the sale, it's about the relationship.
Yeah.
And if you build a relationship, you build the career. Versus anyone can make a sale, but if the sale is not if there's not a win-win on a sale, you're going to be out of business soon.
Right. Well, and when I look at, Chris, when I look at your sales acumen, I believe it's derived from the passion. Number one, you're a smart guy and you understand all the components of a sale, but also the passion you have because you saw the need, you felt the need, you were in the middle of the need at one point in your life, right? So you just knew it was there. You knew there was a problem to solve, and you had the solution, right? So you're so focused on that, and then in selling, like you said, trust. People, when they heard your story, they knew your story. They trust you they trust you fast. Number one, you're a great guy. If anybody meets you, loves you, knows you, and loves you, so the trust is easy for you to get a hold of, right? But then to sell the vision is a big thing because you can passionately believe in a vision like I do often, but if your team doesn't, they may trust you, but they might not believe in your vision.
Right.
So for you to create the clear vision you had to create to have all these people follow you, right? Is really cool. Can you talk about that? How you did that, if you could?
Well, it was really interesting because I started out 1990. I had a little franchise, so this was kind of a cottage industry. It was a lifestyle industry. I could help. I would get up and go to a high school, meet coaches in North Chicago and Waukegan, Libertyville, and Zion, and I would get leads. Coaches would say, "These are the kids that are good enough to play." I'd call moms and dads up, and I'd set my meetings up.
Can I say something? So you came back home after college.
After college,
you live in Chicago or living in
I lived
in north suburbs?
I lived in Chicago, and I would drive up to the north suburbs.
Okay.
Actually, my buddy of mine, my teammate of mine, he was working he had a car wash. His dad had a car wash business. So Andy Baker and I got our first apartment here in Chicago over on Lakeshore in Irving Park, overlooking Wrigley Field. And I would get up and I'd drive it, go to North Chicago. I'd go coach, and then I would go and do meetings with families. And I would go. I basically made my own little service up where we would build we would go to meet a family. I would tell them how this whole thing works. They would hire me for about $328, I think we charged, and I would make a resume on them and build this resume, and I'd send it to the home office, which was in Ohio, and we would make Kinko's copies and send them out to colleges, and we'd market kids with just the old-fashioned way, send it through the snail mail, and the kids would then get letters from colleges, and we'd coach them up on how to handle the process then, and it wasn't scalable at all. And for about 5 or 7 years, I would do that. I'd enroll about 25, 30 kids a month, and that was kind of, I worked with maybe 200-300 kids a year is what all my capacity was at that time. But one thing I learned about the business was that it was a shame. There were a lot of kids, the kids that could afford the services, and there were kids that couldn't afford the services. So I spent most of my time in the more wealthy suburbs enrolling kids in tennis and golf and swimming and football and basketball, baseball. But I would also go back to North Chicago and find ways to help the kids that, I'd take some of the earnings that we would get from the families in the wealthier communities, and I would be able to go and do free things and basically whatever family could afford, I'd help them out in North Chicago. So there was a big challenge in the industry. It was like, if these colleges are just getting resumes from rich, wealthy suburbia families, they're not really getting the best athletes. No. What college coaches are going to really think this is a viable service? You need to have the real athletes on here. So part of our vision was part of my vision was we got to be able to find a way to get the best kids on no matter what. Because if you get the best kids on, the colleges will come. Yep. And if the colleges come, the other families come. So it became this flywheel that it was fueled by getting the best kids on no matter what. So part of my challenge was I knew this industry would not be successful until there was a mechanism to get in kids that really inner city kids, the kids that the colleges want to have and need to have, because the best kids weren't all going to the rich suburban schools. So I was able to start to kind of put a process in place like that, but no one was buying it. No one thought it was doable. And it was about that time when the internet started coming up, and I started looking at emails, and I started putting win faxes together. So instead of putting together a resume and send out 400 pieces of paper, I could click a button and send out 400 kids overnight through a fax machine. And I was doing this on my own because my kids needed help. And the franchise business, they weren't, I said, we got to buy a computer, we got to get a website. And they're like, oh, no, who's going to read email is what they would say. I'm like, I think they'll look at it, because I was getting calls from coaches who were recruiting my kids that I was doing on my own to help them. And at that point, I'm like, there's got to be a better way.
So you're saying back then, I think this email thing may work someday.
It may work someday.
It might work out.
So I quit the franchise business and I started my own company at that point. And I knew this was a way to do it. And I knew if I could go out and enroll, my goal was to get it to 1.5 million in 5 years. That was my vision. And
how big was the franchise company you're working for at the time?
There was maybe, I was selling franchises and teaching franchises how to do this, but it was like almost becoming obsolete. They were working with maybe a couple hundred kids a month. And I was 10% of their business.
So a couple $1 million a year business maybe altogether? Are they still around?
You know what? They're kind of still around. The guy who's running it, they're actually doing some work overseas with some kids in South America. And I just met with the guy he's actually trying to find a way to team up with us. Which is a great guy. They're good people that run it, but they weren't visionary and they didn't leverage technology at all. And the thing that really drove this thing became education. I started to went from the model of me just going house to house to we would go to high schools and do an educational seminar. Yeah. And all of a sudden the whole school would show up, and next thing we'd have 50, 60 leads, and we'd enroll 40 families in a weekend. And we started doing that model. And then so by driving education, then we started hiring more educators, and that's so to get it to 1.5 million in 5 years was the goal. We did it in 18 months.
Wow.
And I'm like, okay. So I was literally sitting there I made my own QuickBooks program, and I'm running credit cards. And I had these other scouts who I had hired and trained with the other companies. After I started my own thing, they're like, what are you doing, Chris? We want to come with you. So I already knew the top 4 or 5 guys that I hired and trained with the other companies, and they came and joined me. And actually a few of them are still with us today.
That's awesome.
Almost 20 years later. And these guys were we were the pioneers. We said, let's do this. And we started getting these leads from these recruiting educational talks we were doing. And we went from 1.5 to 3 million to 7. And then after we got to 1.5, I'm like, all right, we already at our 5-year goal. What do we do next? And then I started needing some help. And then that's where I joined EO, I think it was around then, and met Gary. And I wasn't quite ready to get into YPO. We weren't big.
Yeah, I think you're like $7 or $8 million bucks in revenues, and you're going to get there. I can't wait to. I want you in YPO.
I want you in my forum.
I want you in my forum. I want this guy in my forum, and you're not supposed to recruit people in your own forum. And I did. I was actually a forum. Maybe I was a forum chair then, or shortly after that. But
you screened me. You blocked for me and got me right in. That's great.
But it's funny because I'll never forget the day I met you, and we were at an EO YPO event, and I happened to sit next to Chris, and I couldn't shut up talking, asking more questions to understand who he was, because it was so much fun to get to know him. And by the end of the thing, there's a YPO meeting after. I said, "Come on, the YPO meeting." Well, I'm not YPO, I'm EO. Well, I come anyway. So I went to the guys who are running the meeting. I say, I got this guy, the next YPO here. It's with me. This guy's an all-star, right? And they go, we don't have any room. It's filled. I said, no, you got to find room for this guy. This guy's going to be an all-star. He's an all-star already. Anyway, so sure enough, all right, Rabine. So sure enough, he came to it, right? But shortly after, it wasn't long after, before you hit the numbers, and there was a $10 million minimum in your business. And really shortly after that, within months or a year maybe, Chris was there, so he was in. Yeah. I was like, yes, Chris is in. And sure enough, but even back then, you could hear Chris's vision and his succinct execution plan on how he was going to get to 10 million, then 20 million, then 50 million, and 100 million. And I'm looking at him thinking, come on, man, there's no market cap. How can you think you're going to get to these numbers? I'm going to build this thing. I'm going to build a market cap. It's a new market cap. I'm building it, right? And which is awesome, right? Have
you seen the movie Founder?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. I really feel that's exactly who because you just said it. The guy who you partnered with initially, not that like the two brothers, right? They had a business, but Ray Kroc had a vision. Right. And that's the exact same thing. Yeah. And for you to say, like, you was like, I was at the high school and I was talking to everybody, and I could just see Ray Kroc just talking to these people. Like, So you did all of the exact same stuff, and obviously what Ray Kroc was trying to do was create continuity, and it seems like you already got it with you and your 5 guys.
Right.
How did you create continuity in a business like that?
Well,
in a place that has no market share, like how did you? Because continuity is huge.
Well, the big transformative piece came after we got to like 1.5 million, and I actually hired a consultant. I'm like, how do I, how do I keep the wheels on this thing? This thing's growing really fast.
Extremely.
And it was about to, it was like, how do I manage this growth? And then how do we scale it and keep it going? And I started doing my homework, and really my MBA became finding out who's done things like this before. And I actually had a chance to meet with a good buddy of mine who, through some friends, he actually worked with Jimmy John's dad, a guy named Doug Mealy.
Yeah, sure.
And Doug was a buddy who was accustomed to helping scale businesses. He helped Jimmy John scale his business. He's been instrumental in a few businesses. And I was just buddies, just hanging out buddies with him. And I came and I took him to one of our events. And I showed him, at the end, we'd do the call to action, and how we'd get the leads. And immediately his eyes lit up, and he goes, this is you got something here. And so he became my first kind of board member, and he was really helpful. And one of the things he suggested was to help. We needed to get a vision together, and where is this thing going to be in 10 years? So I hired a company called EntreQuest out of Baltimore, and they really helped coach me. And I put together what was a big part of our business. In 2002, we build a 2012 plan, a 10-year plan as to how to get to $50 million. And I spent months on it, and I wrote, in detail what it would take in terms of our relationships and how many employees we would have, and what would be the revenue in 2013, and what would be the revenue in 2014, and I would always equate revenue with how many lives we would change, how many kids could we help, how many, our culture became helping kids, empowering leaders through sports. That's my term, leadership is what I come up with, and that's how do we help empower leaders through sports? How do I hire kids who played sports in college? All of us have played sports in college. Now we have pretty much about 600 former college athletes in this building that are helping run the show now. But really creating the mold of who's going to do it, how we're going to do it, what's going to be our give back, how many kids we're going to help, and how many kids we're going to sponsor through our leadership grant program, where kids, if they can't afford it, they'll get on at a reduced cost, or they'll get scholarshiped onto the program. So we could create this culture of giving and making sure we're empowering all these leaders.